everyone. Today I am joined with Robert Tankel of Tankel Law Group. He is a community association attorney. I'm going to let you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, Robert, and welcome to Camp Matrix.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself to you and your viewers. I've been practicing in the community association law field since 1982. I started with the firm Becker, Polyakov, and Streitfeld, as it was at the time. Jeff Streitfeld ran for judge. Then it was Gary and Alan, both of whom are deceased. May they rest in peace. But I ended up leaving in 1995 after opening the Clearwater office 9 years earlier, and have been practicing community association law since then, basically from Dunedin. And we represent clients throughout Tampa Bay and all the way up to Northeast Florida.
Just like with a community association manager, obviously are licensed to practice all over the state of Florida. So you kind of can help our entire community here on Camp Matrix?
Yeah, we developed a group of clients up in the Jacksonville area because we vacationed there and my wife grew up there. So yeah, and especially these days when all the pleadings are done by paperless and hearings have gone to Zoom, a lot of what we do can be done over the internet or by video chat like we're having here.
Yep. A lot of it. And I've been talking to all my different managers. They all are telling me that some of their communities just love being virtual. And because you have so many different people that, a lot of people here in Florida, they're snowbirds. So if they're not in town for the meeting, they can always go online and watch it. They love the fact that it's recorded, so they can post it on their website and people can go back and catch up. And
right.
So yeah, I think that I don't think it's going to go away after COVID finally goes away. I think it's going to stay for good. And I welcome it, obviously, being on Camp Matrix. But have you ever gone into YouTube and looked up some of the stuff that the unit owners post on community association meetings? Have you ever done that? There's a couple on there.
I saw a meeting. I'm not even going to get into it. It was not NSFW, as they say. It was a recording of a lawyer discussing architectural issues with her client, and it was didn't work out well for the lawyer. And I'll leave it at that.
If we're talking to the managers, because the managers are educated, that's why I love working with the managers, because you're not in that lower level where you're having to teach from the beginning. But is there ever a point where a manager can advise, not give legal advice, but is there ever a point where you can tell a manager that say there's a certain step that if they cross this line, we can remove, or we can ask them to remove a recording from the internet or from a Facebook page or from YouTube or social media, whatever?
There's a big debate going on about that. If you're talking about what third parties are posting.
Yeah, when you record meetings and stuff, yeah.
I don't think they have any control over that. That's part of the big argument over what's called Section 230. I think it's of the Telecommunications Act of a long time ago, I'd say 1986 or something, which holds that providers of content like YouTube are not responsible for what is put on the platform. And that's a part of a much bigger issue about deplatforming and cancel culture and all that stuff. But I don't think boards have any power to demand that an otherwise legal recording be taken down. Owners have the right to make the recordings. It's codified by law. And I don't think that I would never advise a board to request that it be taken down. And first of all, because I don't think it'll happen. And second, that'll get reported. And then it turns into a big deal where board forcing owner to, you make a martyr out of an owner, basically. And in the news, boards have and also lawyers for associations have a bad reputation because it's kind of like everything the association does to enforce restrictions makes them bad and big news. People have the right to record, and if they want to post it, the only law I know of dealing with an association rights to its property is where a community by the name of Tortoise Island either the developer or the association challenged the realtor on the use of Tortoise Island Realty, or whatever the name of the association was. I mean, Tortoise Island's an island, that there's no intellectual property in that. But they were successful in requiring the outside party unrelated to the community to change their name because of the likelihood of confusion. Now, that's a far cry from what we started talking about, which is posting of videos, but there are intellectual property rights, I suppose, and I've never thought about this, but I'm just freestyling, as Drake would say. But I suppose you could copyright every meeting of every recording of the board meetings and then go after people for violation of copyright. But again, that's going to result in blowback or pushback from the media or owner groups, etc., which is probably worse. What is it? The cure is worse than the disease. You know, you don't want to go around suing people for violation of copyright, because that's going to make a bigger deal of what it was. It's like the old story about Barbara Streisand angry at photographers for publishing photos of her home. And when that got into the press, it was 1 million times more views than just the original posting of the photos. So it can backfire. It's better to be smart than right. That's my motto.
Yeah. What's the hot topic right now with associations, do you think?
Hot topics right now are in areas of use restrictions, short-term rentals. I just responded to a question on a nationwide law blog that deals with short-term rentals being in violation of governing documents as commercial uses. And in Florida, the First District Court of Appeal held almost 4 years ago that just because someone is renting their home, it was an HOA, it had nothing to do with the local statute, it was the documents. And it said no property can be used for a commercial purpose. And someone was sued alleging short-term rentals were in violation of that. And it went up on appeal, and the First District Court of Appeal held residential use is residential, whether it's a night or 2 nights. They didn't say that, but basically, if you're not changing the nature of the use and it happens to be a number of different people, that's not going to stop it. Now, if you do want to address the issue of residential use, then you've got issues with, especially after July 1st, 2021, the legislature added language to the homeowner association law, which is similar to what's been in the Condominium Act for a few years, that says if the members vote to restrict rentals, the restriction, even if it's approved, doesn't apply to those owners who don't vote for it until they sell. So it's kind of like closing the barn door after the horse got in, to give a switch on that metaphor. And the law was actually turned upside down, having practiced since 1982, because the long-standing law in Florida was that you buy subject to knowing that your documents can be amended. But it's that one property right that the legislature in its infinite wisdom saw fit to regulate, as opposed to say, well, pets are different too now because of emotional support animals. But let's say trucks or some type of vehicle, you would normally enact a restriction, grandfather in the use, and then when the use stops, it's applicable. With rentals, even if you jump the hurdle of getting an amendment, it doesn't apply to people who don't approve of it, even if they take a year off from renting. So that's a very hot topic now, short-term rentals. And we even get into things like indicia of short-term rentals, like advertising it on various platforms on the internet, like Vrbo and Airbnb, can be a violation in itself. So that's a hot topic. A lot of communities are concerned about people with violent criminal histories, maybe someone who's did their crime and served their time and they're free to walk the streets. They may be a convicted felon, but it was of a violent nature, or a sexual predator or sexual offender. and they want to amend the documents to preclude someone who's been convicted, not arrested, but convicted of that type of crime. I think that's a political issue. Legally, I think they can do it. I will say that there was a federal court case dealing with the Fair Housing Act that held that such a restriction was unenforceable. I'm not sure the Justice Department would care that much about that right now. But those are two very hot areas. And then you've got typical issues like trucks and so forth, which I think over time are going to diminish only because trucks are becoming more and more parts of everyday life, as opposed to with the indicia of commercial use like ladders and other things in the back of the truck. There's so many laws that are in effect that just get in the way of proper operation of an association. An example of a law that I think is ridiculous is that if 20% of the members of an HOA petition the board to address a topic, the board is obligated by law to call a meeting to discuss that topic. Can differ on whether they have to do that, and it doesn't mean they have to actually show up to the meeting. But imagine if the legislature put that in for all corporations. If 20% of the shareholders of Publix wanted to discuss the price of eggs or shortages of inventory, that corporations couldn't operate.
Yeah,
but why is that appropriate to impose that obligation on associations?
You see various community association unit owners that are not affiliated with the board at all that start Facebook groups or Facebook pages. And I guess there's different ways to look at it. You have some that are doing it in unison with the board. You know, the board's good with it. You want to keep everybody up to date. That's fine. You have some that are doing it because they're having issues with the way the board's running the community. So it turns into a, bash the board, bash the community, constant type group. And you can't keep people, I guess, from doing a private group, but to have an open page, can you shut somebody down like that?
I think that the cure to a rogue group of people who are posting information on the web, whether it's Facebook or through Slack or Getter or anywhere, is not something that's cost effective to try and address from a legal standpoint. There's no law that says people can't do that. That's all about the First Amendment. I've had communities that have had individuals who disagree with the board start their own Facebook pages, and you can have a private page where you only allow certain people in, or even a public page where they are constantly complaining about the board or picking on the board. And the law doesn't neatly fit into that kind of speech because it's free speech. And the board is not a government entity, so it's not like the First Amendment applies. But I think there's probably a qualified privilege. I think most lawyers would agree that there's a qualified privilege to discuss whether you think your board are a bunch of stew-nods or not. For those who don't know, stew-nod, a knucklehead, or worse. Now, if you get to the point of defamation, that's another story, but it's really hard to prosecute and win and be cost effective in a defamation suit. I think the best thing to do is get your message out there, get the board's message out there, have your own open forums, have your own video chats. You can have a meeting at which less than a quorum is present and let it be open. And of course that can get out of control, but it's possible. You can help let people let off steam by having that kind of a forum. Yeah. And it's kind of more of an art than a science. It's an option. It's not a legal issue. It's a political issue. I don't think it's worth the while for boards to go out. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. If you spend time and money going after a site where people are just exercising their rights to say what they want to say, I think you're going to end up losing. But it's not good optics. It's not a good vision. It's not a good use of time. It's better to be smart than right. Yes, they may be saying bad things, they may be bad people, but I think it's better to let more speech, this is a Supreme Court justice who once said this, instead of quashing speech, it should encourage more speech. And I think that the board has to get its message out. And if they don't, then refer to the recall process or the political process and get people interested and motivated and served. This type of government, because associations are the most local government you can have, it's kind of shocking to me that it's almost the amount of activity by members to what's going on with the board is almost inverse to the job the board does. In other words, if the board's doing a good job, people are not going to participate. It's very difficult to find people to get them to step up to committees and other leadership positions to get them ready to step into the board's position. And you end up with board members for life. And sometimes it's board members who stay on only because the people who want to take over have their own axe to grind or something. And if they get in, all they want are fences or something, and they get that and they don't care. In fact, the legislature even says that in a condo election, you only need 20% of all owners to cast a ballot. And that's a pretty low turnout.
That is.
Anything that you want to say to the managers out there in Cam Matrix?
Cam Matrix people, I think you're very fortunate that this forum has developed as an area to exchange ideas. There's other forums like the Community Associations Institute that has 5 classes of members. There's BMI. I think this is a unique opportunity for community association managers, especially portfolio managers, those of you who are juggling 6 or 8 or 10 or however many associations and boards you've got to deal with, is that there's a lot of times where you're put under the gun. And as I said before, or I say to other people, the legislature just loves to regulate everything that you do and everything your boards do, and they're looking to you for leadership. And this is a long overdue resource for you to be able to get input from people who are knowledgeable and ask questions that you might not want to ask your own insurance agent, or meaning the community's own insurance agent or the community's own accountant or lawyer or anyone who happens to be, as like I am, I guess I'm an associate member, and I'm happy to share that information because knowledge is power. And I want you to be comfortable and have a basic background where you know enough not to get in trouble, but to respond to your boards and say, I think I need to get with our insurance agent on that. I think I need to get with our lawyer on that. You're required to be in many sandboxes because you're dealing with that. I think it's a great resource and it's long overdue. So congratulations on starting this. I hope you get out there and, to use a word in a good way, kill it. I think it's great. This has really freed up a lot of time. And of course, there'll be other things that'll find their way to fill the time because it just happens. But this is a great resource. And I have a feeling, I do this all the time. There are managers who I work with who will call me and we play a game. It's called Free Law. And I try and form relationships with our boards and our managers. And oftentimes managers, I know that if some questions, managers kind of say, well, I've got a hypothetical question. And I know, we both know it's a common client, but they'll ask it in a hypothetical way and I'll answer it in a hypothetical way, addressing the facts as presented. And then they don't get in trouble seeing a 0.8 or 6 or whatever time entry, an $80 phone call, which is not hard to do, and then get yelled at for it, because that becomes a self-reinforcing cycle where the manager's just afraid to, frozen to do anything. They don't want to ask the lawyer, or they call and say, I need a favor. And I'll always do that. I mean, that's just me. So, and I think most other lawyers do.
we touched on this with the whole camera thing, with the recording meetings and whatnot, but I want to dial it back to cameras that are set up for security purposes. So you've got the unit owners that might have their own camera, you've got their ring doorbells, and maybe the association has their own security cameras. Is there any liability? Could they ever get in trouble with that?
The issue of, you were talking about hot topics, and one of them that I forgot is the issue of security cameras, especially as they become more advanced. In Florida, it's not illegal to record someone without their consent, video. It is illegal to record their voice without their consent. It can go as high as a felony. For example, you can't record a telephone call. That's why when you call places, almost everywhere, the first thing you hear is this call may be recorded for quality assurance and other purposes. And that way, that is your consent, because you can always hang up. Of course, what's your other option? You just keep going ahead. The issue with some cameras is that they automatically pick up audio and without the consent of the person being recorded, and that can be as high as a felony in the state of Florida. Now, generally, that's not an issue, but I'm dealing with it right now, where an owner put up a camera, not as a doorbell, which is very popular, and I think it's not unreasonable, but they put up a freestanding camera kind of in the corner of the top of a stairwell, and that's an unauthorized material alteration to the common elements.
They put it up in the common area?
An individual owner put their own camera at the top of their stairwell. So I've got to work with the client to deal with that. No one has the right to do that. Now, as far as associations, that gets into whether that is a material alteration or substantial addition to the common elements. And there's a line of case law that doesn't always require that you have a vote. For example, if you've got problems with security, maybe you've noticed in your community that the incidence of crime is going up. Well, I think it's reasonable to react to a changing environment. I think it's always best to get membership buy-in to that idea, because I don't think people want a camera at the swimming pool 24/7.
And it's misleading from a safety perspective, yeah.
Well, or at least advise them, smile, you're being recorded. But even so, especially where people are in other than civilian clothes, I'll call them. Yeah. It's just too much opportunity for bad things to happen and to go sideways. There is a law in Florida against taping of children for explicit purposes or something that I'm not really familiar with, but you don't want that. I don't think you need that. And it's probably not helpful. It doesn't really help preventing crime. It may help solve a crime. So because cameras are so ubiquitous anymore, people aren't shocked to see them. It's an interesting issue. I think it can be regulated by amendment to the documents to say that no one can do this, but then people want it. And then you've got issues of law enforcement combining the mesh of their cameras with the private cameras, and we do end up with a surveillance state. Now, whether that's what we as a people want, that's another story. I confine myself to the four corners of the documents or the boundaries of the condo. And again, installation of cameras is a topic that should be shared with the members. It's all a matter of optics and not just of the cameras, but what do people think you're doing and why are you doing it? And then the question is, do you have membership buy-in, whether you have a vote or not? Since the legislature passed a law that says you can't retroactively vote to approve a material alteration, which I have some constitutional troubles with, but the legislature wants condo associations to have votes before material alterations take place. And the challenge is, if you can't get people to vote, you're not going to get to an artificially high level of participation to approve a material alteration. And I think too many cameras ends up being a material alteration. So it's really more art than science, but it is definitely an up and coming issue, and it'll get even more intense. A lot of times I'll get calls where the client will complain about Joe Blow is interfering with the painters, telling them how to do their job. And the painters don't know any better, and sometimes contractors walk off because they're just tired of people harassing them.
Yeah.
So that can get out of control, where you've got people who are self-vigilantes, quote unquote, protecting the association.
Yeah, that's what we were just discussing that on one of our podcasts with a couple of other service partners that do landscaping. And I said, I feel bad for your guys, because there's always some kind of unit owner that walks out there. It's like watches everything they do.
You busted my sprinkler head again.
Yeah. Did you cut that? You didn't cut that short enough. Whatever they do. And then so I feel bad for them, because they literally have to train their employees how to deal with unit owners. They're not the powers that be. They have a foreman on site, but.
The best advice I can give, whether it's to a director or a service provider or a manager, is when you come up against a belligerent owner or person, keep retreating. If you've got an owner or anybody who's in your face barking at you, the best thing you can do, and this goes counter to what most people want to do, including me, is nod your head and keep saying, yes, I understand. Yes, thank you. Thank you for your input. I appreciate that. I will pass that along. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. And if you don't push back, they don't get energy from your pushback.
Yeah, because they kind of want that confrontation. And
that's probably one of the best ways to diffuse confrontation. Or yes sir, 3 bags full, right?
Yeah, just keep going.
See my boss, he's Mr. So-and-so. I'm concerned about the lack of willingness or understanding of people to get out and be part of something collectively to make things better.
Yeah, that's the scary thing about community associations is that they have these meetings at night. People come home from work, and if you have someone who's an irresponsible drinker, they might drink a little bit before the board meeting. So they come in and they're all, and maybe normally they wouldn't be that way, but.
Well, and they're PO'd because their boss ticked them off or their coworker ticked them off, and they're whatever. And then if you have them during the day, people complain, well, you have them during the day, no one can attend. So it's really a no-win kind of deal. And I don't know the answer, but if someone could figure out how to get a community sense of community and have it snowball in effect, they could put it in a bottle and sell it, or a pill, or inject or smoke and sell it. You could retire, because people are just, and that's what's shocking to me as a student of the political process, how it is that people will go for years with no opposition in being elected when they would be glad to get off if someone would work half as hard as they do. Half as hard.
Yeah.
But instead they stay on because it's just a bunch of nuts who have a single agenda, who want that one thing. And when they get it, poof, they're gone.
Yeah, and they come in and screw stuff up, long enough to screw some stuff up, and then they leave. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being here today with me and taking the time out.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered. Thank you so much.
I look forward to your CU classes here on the CAM Matrix, and then I also look forward to us doing some kind of legal Q&A in the future here soon.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and as I said, I will be anywhere, anytime, reasonably, to help you succeed.